This is a VR title made for fans of high-action shooters, and it clearly aims to capture that classic thrill you might remember from titles like Call of Duty. Now, let's talk about whether Crossfire Sierra Squad delivers on that, starting with the mechanics. Mechanics that, if nothing else, undeniably deliver that unmistakable Call of Duty vibe. The gunplay here is punchy, which is surprisingly rare in VR shooters. You've got hit markers for each shot, and you'll likely notice that enemies don't just drop with a single hit like they might in other VR FPS games. It takes multiple shots to bring them down, but it's balanced enough to where they won't flat out feel like bullet sponges. The guns obviously play a big role, and they're designed with ease of use in mind. Most of the weapons come equipped with a laser sight, which quickly becomes your go-to aiming tool. It's just easier to rely on your laser than trying to line up shots with the iron sights or even your scopes at times. In terms of reloading, some guns have fully manual reloading and some don't. Some even use a hybrid system where starting the reload initiates an automatic animation that takes care of the rest. I'm not a fan of it, but it does make for some pretty smooth animations. At the very least, it's a good balance between immersion and ease of play, but the sights themselves can be a bit frustrating to aim with. Despite this, the guns feel satisfying to handle when you get past the occasional jank that comes with trying to shoulder your gun. It feels like a collision problem, but sometimes shouldering your gun actually makes it harder to aim. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it will get your attention. Gunplay aside though, a major highlight is co-op. You can team up with your friends, which I'm sure you'll prefer because don't expect much help from your AI-controlled squad mates. No joke, Raoul here goes down faster than a fainting goat. Dude is like the glass cannon without the cannon. Basically, you're alone if you're playing a solo campaign, so be ready for that experience. At least you've got some flexibility with how you approach a mission. You can choose your loadout between missions, picking from a range of weapons you can buy with money you get for completing said missions. And if you're into wave after wave of action, this game has you covered with a horde mode, but honestly, almost every mission in the campaign feels like a horde mode of its own. Enemies just keep coming, which fits right in with the high-end adrenaline arcade shooter genre. The game's difficulty levels also add to the challenge quite a bit. They range from easy to a difficulty literally called devs couldn't clear. The normal difficulty gets pretty intense in later missions, so I wouldn't be surprised if its hardest difficulty is flat out impossible. But in short, Crossfire Sierra Squad's mechanics hit that sweet spot between fun and challenging, with a bit of added jank. On the other hand, this game sounds absolutely amazing. Granted, it was off to a rough start because my first experience with the sound was non-existent. A bug prevented any audio from playing initially, but luckily a quick restart solved this issue. And once everything was working as it should, I was genuinely impressed. Out of all of the VR games I've played, this one has the best explosion sounds. No other game has even come close. Even the stun effects deserve a shout out. They're executed so well that the first time you experience one, it may genuinely stun you.
Watch out for rockets!
It really does feel like you're momentarily disoriented, which is just incredibly immersive. And as for the voice dialogue, it's not bad at all. The characters don't often feel overacted or out of place, and the lines are delivered with that gun-blazing Warzone persona baked right in.
Why did you run? Should I tell you why?
Chief, let's just shoot him.
In a nutshell, the audio experience is definitely a highlight of this game. The theme is pretty good too. Crossfire Sierra Squad stays true to the concept of an arcade shooter. The focus here is more on action and pacing rather than intricate level designs and puzzles. Missions follow a straightforward structure. You get from point A to point B and clear out all the enemies there, then move on to point C. It's a rinse and repeat cycle, but for a game in this genre, the repetitiveness doesn't result in boring gameplay. In the campaign, you play as Terry, a soldier for a group called Global Risk. You're head of the Sierra Squad, and your main opposition is an organization known as Blacklist. That sounds pretty sick, and this game sets up that classic good versus bad dynamic while throwing in some ambiguity to keep things interesting. Throughout each mission, there's a constant stream of dialogue that adds context to what's going on, but fair warning, you'll often be in the middle of an intense firefight during these conversations. It's easy to miss some of the back and forth if you're too focused on survival. That said, the theme doesn't stray too far from the classic arcade shooter formula. It essentially delivers a straightforward and immersive experience in that regard. And of course, we can't forget to talk about the graphics. Graphics aren't everything, but depending on the game, they matter more or less, so we have to talk about them. That said, the visuals on the weapons and gear look solid. The level of details on your guns and gear is impressive, with textures that clearly change from one material to another. The way these materials transition into one another is crazy, but unfortunately, this level of detail doesn't always extend into the broader environment. There's a noticeable difference in quality between various surfaces, with some looking fantastic and others looking unpolished. It's a bit of a mixed bag, but with all the action happening, your eyes likely won't be drawn to the weaker textures, unless you're deliberately searching for them like I was. And since we're on the topic of graphics, the grenade explosions are some of the most immersive I've seen in VR. Even the training targets in the main menu react with a satisfying realism when hit, shattering in a way that makes sense for cement dummies. Granted, cement targets don't make much sense in a shooting range, but overall the graphics still hold up pretty well. And you should be able to enjoy these graphics because this game has pretty solid options. There's a wide range of them to customize your experience, especially when it comes to motion sickness settings. You have control over vignette strength and snap turning speed, which can make a big difference for players prone to VR discomfort. The developers have clearly put thought into comfort here, and I'm sure we can all appreciate that. On the graphics side, you can select from graphical preset options or mix and match them. I ran the game on high, which is the standard for all of my reviews, and it was a solid balance between visuals and performance. Personally, I wouldn't recommend playing this one on lower graphical settings, but again, it runs pretty smooth, so you shouldn't have to. Menu navigation, on the other hand, could be more immersive. Like the rest of the menus in this game, the option menu feels a bit flat, which is always a minor letdown in VR. Still, the variety of options available here show a strong commitment to player comfort and flexibility. All things considered, the question that needs answering is how immersive is this game? Graphics gets a 4 out of 6. The guns and effects look amazing, even if the environment doesn't always match up. Mechanics gets a 3 out of 6 because the gameplay itself is straightforward, action-packed, and not boring. The occasional jank with looking down sights and shouldering your gun will affect your experience though. Audio gets a 5 out of 6 because everything from the sound of the explosions to the in-game dialogue hits pretty good. Theme gets a 5 out of 6. It stays true to the arcade shooter genre while throwing in an action-packed story to match. And Options gets a 5 out of 6 because comfort was clearly in mind when developing the settings, even if immersion took a backseat. The high-energy arcade-style action draws you in quickly with intense gunfights and explosion effects that make you feel like you're right in the thick of it. The detailed weapon graphics combined with the satisfying punch of each shot and the quality explosions create a real sense of presence. For those reasons, Crossfire Sierra walks away with an immersion score of 4.5 out of 6. It's an experience I can confidently recommend, but it's only available for PC and PSVR 2. So if you don't have either of those, check out some of my other reviews after hitting the subscribe button. But I'm positive you'll find at least one good game. Until next time though, stay immersed.